Headlines that we may not get enough time to look at this morning. And on page 8 of the Daily Nation, because of time, medical trips rule to rein in rogue doctors. Patients can only be referred abroad if there are enough reasons to do so. Now, a doctor will from now on only refer a patient abroad for treatment if there is evidence that hospitals in the country lack the capacity to take care of them. The new measures published yesterday are meant to put strict measures on international referral and to protect patients from rogue doctors who misadvise them to seek treatment abroad in exchange for kickbacks. That's on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Also, doctors to petition MPs over payroll. Remember, even as the strike enters its 5th day today, the 58th day today. The 5th day is about the suspended 1-month sentence issued by Justice Wasilo on the union officials. They could be going to jail for a month this morning because they're yet to call off the strike. Now, of course, they were given a 2-week break. Now, a 5-day extension. It ended yesterday. Today, if the strike continues, we just await to see what the courts will do. Another very interesting headline that I'm sure you might need to mention even as we wrap up. NYS theft probe runs out of steam. And this is something we mentioned on this panel. Probably maybe one of you or two of you could have been here. And we mentioned that we were treated to so much drama and sarcasm on live TV, especially with the parliamentary committee, parliamentary accounts committee. Now that whole process has come to naught. Unfortunately, nothing is happening. Even the court proceedings, because the magistrate who was handling that issue was promoted to judge. Now the issue has gone to another magistrate. 26 suspects on trial. Now the matter has been taken by a new magistrate. That means that this new magistrate has set new dates for hearing of these cases. That thing will drag on and on. Meanwhile, the Parliament's Justice and Legal Public Accounts Committee is being accused of receiving bribes amounting to 40 million shillings. And that's why that discussion will not continue. Wow. I'll give you an opportunity to say something probably at the end of this news review. Let's now talk about voter listing. We're already into end of January. That means we've already done 2 weeks. We are midway the voter registration exercise. The numbers up till now are yet to come out. I guess IEBC will probably release numbers either today or tomorrow so that you can gauge where we are. But it has to do with that issue of one MP crossing the border to another country, trying to get voters to register. Meanwhile, in Nyanza, there's a problem because the local MPs and the administrators are clashing over how this should be done. Local administrators have said they will not allow any of these unorthodox methods employed by various parties to force or to coerce or to get people to register as voters. But MPs are saying, hey, if it's happening elsewhere, why are you stopping us? Surely, if it's wrong, it's wrong. Senator Kajwang, you come from that region. What exactly is happening? Let's get it from you so that we understand why there's a clash between MPs or legislators, for that matter, and the local administrators.
We have adopted fairly creative ways to convince people to register as voters and also to convince people to apply for identity cards. You won't believe it, but the number of people without identity cards in certain parts of this country is extremely high. And if you look at Kenya, just look at Kenya all round. The counties that border other nations, they tend to be opposition counties. In fact, count them, you might find that 90% are opposition counties. The national government, because issuance of IDs is the role of the national government, has been very stingy when it comes to issuance of national IDs. So we have to go out of our way as political leadership to convince people and to entice them to register for those documents. Now, when we try that, which is a way of trying to help the national government achieve its objectives, we have national government functionaries that tell us, hey, wait, that's not your job, leave it to us. I've never seen such mediocrity in my life before, because other parts of the country, the national government, the president himself, has even said that national ID cards should come out after 3 days. The law says 30 days. He has given a presidential directive. I don't know how legal it is, but in certain parts of the country, it is being enforced. But in the so-called NASA and CORD strongholds, you find the provincial administration acting as a stumbling block. So that's one of the fundamental issues we've raised. We don't want double standards in areas that are perceived to be opposition strongholds. We don't want people to go into a registration center in central Kenya, for example, or in Kericho, where Cheriot comes from, and then walk in the morning, get their ID card, and the next day they've got a voter's card. If they can do that in Central and Rift Valley, then they should also be able to do that in Nyanza and in northern Kenya.
But Senator, we've had cases where youth are even erecting roadblocks in parts of Nyanza, and you cannot be allowed to pass through unless you actually brandish your voter's card.
Well, that's why I'm saying creative ways. You are not stopped. You are not stopped from proceeding simply because you don't have a voter's card. In fact, what they, particularly in Homa Bay County, what you're looking for is an identity card, because for you to be an adult Kenya, you need to have an identity card. That's a requirement in the law. In fact, we're just helping the state machineries to enforce something that is legal. Voter's card is, in fact, what we are doing is, if you have an ID card and you don't have a voter's card, we help you to, we suggest that you go to the nearest registration center and get registered.
So the roadblocks are erected as a suggestion box to give suggestions to...
yes, you can call it a suggestion box. But it's not only happening in Nyanza. It is happening in every single part of this country, even in Central. You have seen cases where even bar owners are saying they're not selling alcohol to you if you don't have a voter's card, leave alone a national ID card. But let me talk about the much bigger issue around voter listing. I think as politicians, we need to sell to Kenyans why they must register, and we must assure them that when they vote, their vote will count, and that vote will be counted. That has contributed to some sense of apathy in certain parts of the country, because there's this feeling that Jubilee, with all the shenanigans and amendments to electoral laws, all the chest thumping, they've stolen it before it has started. You are registering people as voters in the week when the Electoral Commission says that 120,000 records share duplicate ID numbers. So people are asking, are we putting money in a pocket that already has holes? So there is that aspect of lack of conviction and lack of belief that it is going to be a fair process. But there's also the issue of hunger. We were in northern Kenya with Senator Zani. People are sleeping, people are going hungry in a country that should have had 1 million acres under irrigation. People are going hungry in a country that has got billions of Kenya shillings taken to a ministry called Ministry of Water, and I don't know what else, and irrigation, and cattle dying, livestock dying, human beings are dying, and people are asking, why then should I vote? It is my life that is more important than this.
Bwana Kirwa, of course, it's only 2 weeks before this last voter registration exercise comes to an end. Such kind of issues are being raised by the legislators from Nyanza. Do you think that you will still be able to manage, as an opposition, to get enough numbers towards the election?
Well, even the registered voters that we have are enough to make us win the next election. Well, I'm sure our brothers in Jubilee and sisters in Jubilee, they think they will win, but I'm more convinced than before that this thing is, we are going to clinch it. But a more fundamental issue, I raised the issue last week about this double registration or using the same ID. I remember one Jonathan Kipto from my constituency. She has an ID with somebody, Isaiah Nyongesa. Same date of birth, same ID number, but different, but two different voters. We want to be told with this 129,000 voters who seem to have that problem, what has been done about it. Number two, the issue as I drove in this morning, I was told in Nakuru County, it was reported 400,000 IDs are lying uncollected. 400,000. It bothers me a lot whether these figures are correct and whether somebody has done an audit to tell us exactly why they are uncollected. When somebody goes for an ID, he is so keen to have that particular document, especially young people. It may be the first document in their name, in their possession. How come that 400,000 may be lying in Nakuru? I hope it is not true. Number three, I raised this issue and I hope the Electoral Commission will tell us. If these BVR kids for identification of voters are only 8,000, and we have more than 30,000 polling stations. How are we going to distribute them on the D-Day? Are we going to buy more? Or is the manual backup going to be 80% of the issues that are going to be used to identify voters? So these are fundamental issues. Finally, on this particular issue of voters, it is not really how many people will register. My estimation at the time was probably 4 million would be a good target for Electoral Commission. But more fundamental, if Jubilee is convinced they will win this election, let the process be credible. Let the process be transparent. Let them win in the eyes of the public, but not in a court of law like the last election.
Of course, after the next 2 weeks, the numbers are going to come out, and every politician, or rather every political grouping, will be using calculators to see this plus this plus this, how much do I have? Do you think that will now be a recipe for court actions and people now challenging?
I think it will be, and I think it will be the basis of really trying to contextualize and understand what is happening. If Jubilee was very confident that they would win, we would not see these shenanigans that are going on. Would actually by now very comfortably be seen, because it's a very easy, very straightforward process. We would not see double registration to the number of 128,000 and no credible explanation coming from that. We would be looking at the issue of suppression that is very real over time, that has happened, that we know that registration is not unique across the board. We would be looking at the issue of IDs. Some places in Central, somebody is going to go in there and get an ID within 1 day. In fact, there are centers where we are getting reports that somebody gets the ID, and then they just go and they are able to get their voter registration immediately. The person in Kwale cannot do that. The person in Northeastern, where we've been, cannot do that. You've just talked about the report of members of parliament, Jubilee-oriented, in Uganda. We are expecting the same, even maybe from Ethiopia, from Eritrea, from the neighboring. That means something fundamentally is going wrong. One of the things we need to do is a social audit that is going to be very, very well streamlined. For example, if we look at the figures in Central, where we are expecting over-representation, we need to go back to KCPE results and the figures of the people who actually did the exam then, and estimate that these are the people who would be 18. And we'd want to have an explanation about how the numbers then rose so statistically significantly much higher than can happen demographically. I think IBC needs to speak very loudly on this issue and very, very clearly. IBC is giving its second report. The good thing is they've actually said every Monday they will be giving the voter registration statistics, so that we can actually be able to look at this. And I think for this week they should be coming out today. That is good. We're going to look at all those. But my worry is only one, that if we look at this but we just continue, then we are really raising a very, very dangerous trend in this country. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to find solutions. We cannot say in this day and age we don't have solutions, even technical ones, technologically oriented ones, where you put in ID and it should be able to see that immediately. We should be able to see clearly that this is somebody else's ID. This person has already been registered. So definitely a lot is going on, and it doesn't fathom very well. And I think with all that, we will still win, because at the end of that day, it's really about the numbers and the people who are going to come on board.
Senator Cheruiyot, of course, I do not envy your position today. You're alone against
nothing really.
Let me give you an opportunity to defend your
nothing really to be worried about, save for one thing. And I've kept on repeating this thing, I think, for the entire length of this show today. Politics for politics' sake, which is what Code Coalition excels in more than anything else. You know, I've just come in from Kericho yesterday evening, where it is a perceived Jubilee stronghold, and the very issues they're trying to say happens where somebody walks into an ID issuance center, and by evening they walk out with it. I wish it was the same, because I get bashed by my constituents. I walk into them and they tell me, Senator, what are we going to do? I applied for my ID in November. Up to now I haven't seen it. The president has said this thing needs to be done within 3 days for people to register. It's not happening. But when you listen to these leaders spew lies before the nation and say in Jubilee strongholds, these are the things that are happening, you really wonder what kind of psyche are
they trying to input into their nation? And I keep on reminding them that we have a country, despite the fact that you may not be in government right now or in positions of executive leadership, that we have a country that we must protect. When people watch you on a morning show, you know, and you're trying to claim that in places like central Kenya, people are walking into voter registration or ID registration centers, and in the evening they have an ID card. I don't think it's fair of us as leadership, because we know these challenges exist. I think we owe it to Kenyans, being leaders, to come to this show and table statistical evidence, you know. And one of the other things that I keep on running into problems with my colleagues here is that they keep on mentioning IBC and Jubilee in the same breath. IBC is our referee. We don't speak for them. We don't hold brief for them. If there are challenges with the IBC, come on, let's give them a break. We just ushered in new commissioners the other day, all of us, where everybody accepted and said, okay, these are new commissioners, let us give them break. Come on, give them even benefit of the doubt that they were so sincere to come out and say, one of the first problems we've noticed is that there's 120,000 people who share IDs. Let's not castigate them already and say, what are you doing? Please tell us many other things. It's just not fair. And there's another point. You know, friend, you're going to give me double the amount of time. In fact, triple, because NASA has 3 speakers and I speak. One very fundamental point, which I keep on here being repeated by CORD leadership. I've had Mheshimiwa Kirwa repeat that the Jubilee coalition won at the courts. It is not true. We won by a margin of 800,000 votes. It took the courts to convince them that you had lost and you don't have a case. So I hope, as I speak this time, they will agree to accept the result that will be given by IBC and not have to go to court again to be given a determination that you don't have a case.
Fred, it's important to clarify certain things, and I just want to ask Mheshimiwa here, because you know he talks about claims and he wants to present this picture that CORD leaders just say things. The 791 was just said it was a claim. We have just talked about a court process and a parliamentary process that is dying down. So wasn't that said? Did it not happen? That
well,
it was that?
It doesn't mean
no,
in every instance when you
and
speak
that's precisely. So we point out, and it's really up to us, and that's why we said that these audits have to be there. We need to be very clear as we listen to each other as leaders about what to say, because it seems to be there's a narrative that is very popular with this end, that they say, oh, you know, things are just being said. No, they've been said and followed through, and most of them come out to be true.
What do you do when 90% of the time it turns out to be just
Which one? No, that is not true. No, that is not true. You know it.
Okay, fine. Let's give that issue a break, because we do understand that the IBC is yet to release the latest numbers, and I'm sure once they do, it will make for even much better conversation, because now we'll be looking at the numbers, and everyone will look at their county and see how they're doing.
What is happening?
Yes. But let's move on now to NASA. And yesterday the leaders met, and we do understand that today you're unveiling a technical team that is going to be tasked with the very huge job of getting a flag bearer and probably the running mate for that coalition. Now, how is this going to happen? And because there's a lot of pessimism, skepticism with regard to whether or not the opposition is able to actually agree on one candidate.
One thing that is sure that is going to happen is that today the team is going to be unveiled. The other thing that you can be sure, we are going to get one presidential candidate at the right time and not on the agenda of Jubilee. Why are they bothered when we already know theirs? They don't have to know ours. Also, it's good to remind Mheshimiwa Cheruiyot that 2002, it took us 2 months to identify the candidate, and within a period of 60 days, we won the election, 66% against 34%. Now, so the issues that are going to be discussed will be determined by the terms of reference that committee shall, upon its appointment, stipulate. But I know fundamental is the issue of the flag bearer, how we're going to carry out nominations in various constituencies, and also what are the terms of engagement of these parties, because we do not want to collapse any of the outfits, because we strongly believe that,
including CORD.
What I mean is there are constituent parties of CORD, as you know. I come from ANC, and there are other small parties So all that is what we are going to work on.
Because
immediately.
according to this story on page 6 of the Daily Nation, of
Yes.
course, the four are understood to have agreed to adopt NASA as a uniting factor for all political entities represented by opposition leaders supporting a joint presidential candidate. Now, this would in effect spell the end of the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy code. Is that what is happening?
That's what I've been reported. Let's wait and go to the meeting, because I don't want to preempt the discussions that they had yesterday. I'm sure my party leader gave me a brief, which I do hope is the truth. I do know is the truth about what transpired
So
yesterday.
that assertion there, you are not privy to it?
I don't want to engage in it, because we are going for a meeting, and I will be preempting the discussions that we are going to engage.
Oh, so there will be another
I'm sure is
meeting.
going to be part of that thing. And once we are together, we are going to agree on how best to go.
What we are clarifying, I think what
Yes.
Mheshimiwa is trying to clarify is that we're not going to have the sort of merger into one party like like they did.
Yeah.
But we're going to come up with our own ways. We're going to have formulas. We're going to have logistical issues and technical issues. We're actually going to have a technical team together with the leadership, actually going to do this in a very, very systematic way, because this is important. One, we know that the whole coalition will hold,
The
and
Ford
two,
coalition.
that coalition
Under
coalition
NASA?
under NASA will hold.
So,
Under
but
NASA,
if you have
under
NASA,
NASA will hold, but remember,
it means code cannot exist.
remember, what we're talking about are the various affiliate parties within either NASA or CORD. That dynamic doesn't change. The parties remain the same. In fact, they're not completely complete, because we are also inviting other parties still into the coalition. So at this point, we're talking about the dynamics at the end of the day in terms of the formation, because we had CORD, we have NASA. It's a dynamic that keeps developing, and therefore as we move on, we are sure that we have the dynamics of how to handle that, put this technical team into place, put the leadership into place to ensure that the dynamics of that is handled, so that we have, as you say, the one flag bearer, and there will be one flag bearer.
Well, Senator Kajwang, before we come to Senator Cheriot, because I can see it's just Senator Kajwang, of course, I know the party officials are here and have spoken, but I'm sure you must have something to say. Do you think it is safe to get rid of CORD as a coalition in favor of NASA?
No, Fred, let's not split hairs. You can have a coalition of coalitions.
Yeah.
That's a fact. If you go to the Political Parties Act, when you deposit coalition agreements, it does not say the coalition has to be of political parties. It can be a coalition of coalitions. So let's not spend too much time
So
on
CORD
trying
could
to
be a party within the NASA coalition?
Well, CORD is a coalition. There's ANC and several other parties that can come together to form a broader-based coalition. So the technicalities are neither here nor there. But beneath the facade of bravado that my friend is displaying. And remember, he was called the computer-generated senator. Let him not forget.
And as we speak,
beneath that facade, there's real terror.
Yes.
There is real terror. Fred, in the history of Kenyan politics since 2002, I'll give you an example. Musalia Mudavadi and Kalonzo Musyoka have barely been on the same political side. Look at those elections. If you look at the history of Kenyan politics, a man like Kipruto Kirwa, who's got a rich history in Kenyan politics, and people like Cyrus Jirongo have been here and there. This time, all these gentlemen are in one team. And we sit with these senators, with these legislators from across the political divide, sometimes when we're having tea in parliament. They are terrified, and their only option right now is to go and pick some of the Eurobond they kept somewhere and try to entice some people to run independently. That is the only option they're remaining with, because I agree with Kipruto Kirwa that if you are looking for tyranny of numbers, it is this coalition of coalitions that we are calling NASA that has got the real tyranny of numbers.
Senator Cheriot, are you terrified? I can see a huge grin on your face, and
I can assure
is it
you,
hiding some.
I can assure you one thing, that in the next 2 or 3 months, Kenyans will be treated to the greatest political circus of all time in this thing called NASA. Why do I say so? Every time we look at NASA leaders speak and sit together, you cannot read anything else other than mistrust. How will you explain, for example, that on a certain Tuesday, they all troop to Bomas, hold their hands and say, we are going to give you one presidential candidate and we'll redeem this country.
Then the following day, one of the principals goes ahead together with his deputy party leader and holds a press conference and say, we don't recognize this thing called NASA. How do you explain such a charade, and you want us to get scared? I think I want to agree with the words of the deputy president when he spoke in Kasarani about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that we've never faced a more clueless and rudderless, political opponent than this thing called NASA. Because, let me tell you one thing that we all need to remember. We would be more worried if NASA was a unity of people who were with us in 2013 but have now left us to join them. What is NASA? It's just coming together of all the political losers of 2013, and they're now saying we want to work together. Add up their numbers and tell us, is there any credible evidence that NASA has made any inroads into Jubilee strongholds? Absolutely none. Is there any credible evidence that Jubilee has made inroads into what was perceived as opposition struggle in last election? Exactly. There is so much to show for it, and therefore why would we be worried? And you know one thing that is for sure, and I can bet my last penny of this: these guys are not going to give us a single presidential candidate, and if they dare do, they open up half of their voting population to crossover, because half of their population don't believe in the 4 guys. You have people who are coming and saying, let this guy come in, but we hope and pray he cannot be our presidential candidate. The day he will not be named, half of them will come to Jubilee, and that's how we will win this election.
Well, because of time. That is wishful thinking.
Fred, let me educate my brother. In politics,
as you finalize our news with you,
1 plus 1
final shot.
1 plus 1 is not always 2 in politics. When you see Kalonzo and Musalia and Raila sitting together, don't look at it simplistically that it is the votes they got that it is coming together. They have much bigger dynamics. So if I'm glad that you guys are sleeping under the assumption that 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. We will sort you out by 8 a.m. on 8th of August.
Well, unfortunately, there is so much propaganda and also insults, because you've just heard saying rudderless. Rudderless, if you are to check the definition of that, none of us qualifies to be in that particular category. And the part of the problem why I think Jubilee is campaigning for us through the deputy president is that when he spews insults on other leaders with total disregard of their status in life, that is how we gain voters. Let him go back even to the Kalenjin land. There is pregnant atmosphere of change. It is only that they want to see a credible alternative on the other side. I can assure him by June this year, there will be a lot of exodus of people from Kalenjin and other parts of Kenya who are pro-Jubilee as we talk today.
And the signs of those are already very clear. And as much as they're saying we haven't made inroads, unless he's the only man in Jerusalem who has not been seeing the happenings, even in their stronghold, about the reception that we're getting as an opposition into those strongholds. The one thing they need to realize is that people address issues. At the end of the day, a hungry Kenya is a hungry Kenyan, and he wants that to be addressed. He doesn't want that to be addressed because I am in Jubilee. We have seen the president going to places, and the president, he's been asked, what have you done for this region? So definitely the sort of thundering and feathering is not even affecting us in any way. And even some of the inroads they think they have been made on the basis of individual candidates, and that should not be read as a percentage increase in any way. But definitely I would worry if a majority, far than half of region, is supporting one coalition and not the other. That for me would be something to worry about, and that's what tyranny of numbers is all about.
Finally,
one thing that our colleagues need to appreciate is that Kenyans are not the fools they imagine them to be. CORD is running on a platform of change, and all you hear when you go to CORD rallies is that these are thieves, please let's kick them out of office. Then Kenyans sit down and reflect after the choppers have taken off and the dust has settled, and they ask themselves, who is this that was telling us that the other guys are thieves? Look at the 4 presidential candidates that they hope to pick one of them from. Tell me one of them that doesn't have a name mentioned in a corruption scandal in this country.
Take them to court.
And Kenyans are not fools. They know these people, and they are saying, okay, I think to some extent Kenyans are beginning to say, if all of these guys are corrupt, then we'd rather pick up somebody who's corrupt but has something to show for it. I'm saying Kenyans are saying, if you are telling us that those guys are corrupt, and we also know that you are irredeemably corrupt, then let's look at another agenda, unfortunately, which CORD doesn't have. All they go to political rallies is to sing and harp about how Jubilee hasn't done anything. And people, the same people you're telling, they used tarmac that wasn't there before 2013 to come to that political rally. In their homes, they're lighting up electricity that wasn't there before 2013. When they fall sick, they go to hospitals and get MRI scans that they used to travel thousands of kilometers away. Then they look at you and they wonder, what are these people
talking about? As a result of evolution,
ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. Unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you, Senator Aaron Cheriot from Kericho County, Senator Agnes Zani, Secretary General ODM, Bwana Kipruto Rapkirwa, Deputy Party Leader, Amani National Congress, and Senator Moses Kajwang from Homa Bay County, helping us look at the headlines this morning. That has been our news review. Of course, Power Breakfast still continues. My name is Fred Ndimuli. Good morning.